Hello and welcome back to the European edition of YCS 200. I'm here with Matthew Bell.
Hey Luke, and we're here in Wivington. That's not where we are. We are
That's
here in
a real
Utrecht.
place. That is a place.
Oh, there you go. But
Yeah.
we're not there. We're in Utrecht.
Yes,
For the top 16.
Yeah. So we've cut it all the way down to just 16 players left.
Down from 2,356.
Yeah. Yeah. And almost all of the decks at this point are playing some kind of SkyStriker.
Yeah, we expected that was going to be a lot of them, but is there any kind of alternate decks left in the top?
I think that Ollie and Tom will be able to give us the deck breakdown for that.
Sure.
But I can tell you that in this particular matchup, so it's SkyStriker Trickstar versus the pure SkyStriker variant.
Ah, okay.
It's actually favored to the Trickstar variant. No, sorry, other way around. The pure variant by 5%.
Ah, okay. The hybrid losing out about 5% on the advantage meter.
Which is surprising, because when we went back into the previous format, the whole point of them adding the Trickstar cards was to have that advantage in the pure matchup. So it seems strange now that that has changed over.
How many times did that matchup occur?
112 times.
Okay,
throughout the
so
tournament.
quite a bit of data there to support that, but
Yeah.
maybe we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, exactly. So let's take it over to our commentators, Oliver Gurman and Tom Payne, for the play-by-play. Take it away, guys.
Well, thank you very much, Luke and Matt. It's been a very long day. It's been a very long weekend, in fact, which started in my case at 2 a.m. on Thursday night when I learned that my flight got cancelled. Somehow made it to Utrecht, and it's been the same for a couple of other guys that are at this tournament. Among them was Thomas Rose, who just got kicked out in the last round, so we have only one more Burning Abyss remaining in the top 16 bracket. We can try and bring that bracket up for you guys, so you can basically get a full picture by yourself. Let's try and...
Just like to mention, when we showed the top 64 breakdown earlier, the other deck was Pendulum.
Oh, okay.
Just in case anyone was interested in what the other deck was. It was one Pendulum deck I had looked through.
Right. So here are the players in the various locations. You see that one German player is... I was about to say that one German is definitely going to end up in the semi-finals, which is not true because there's Julio Valls from Spain with Altergeist at the top left corner. He might... put a bit of a stone in the way of the Germans in that part of the bracket. Let's just assume everybody is SkyStriker pure with a couple of exceptions. Those exceptions are Din Kabui. He's the third on the left-hand side, playing Burning Abyss. Then we got Sven Rebmann, who we're going to feature now, going up against Marcel Hansch, because Sven Rebmann is playing SkyStriker Trickstar. Then we got to move to the other side of the bracket and to Boden Temnik, the guy that we featured at the very beginning of the tournament, still in the tournament. You guys know this, he's playing Altergeist.
Might be quite poetic to feature him at the end as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to feature him at the very beginning and at the very end, and I think he's not going to complain about this. He's going up against Sahab Ali Shah from the UK, who's playing SkyStriker Trickstar. And then we got...
That's it.
Nothing else. That is it.
Everything else is pure striker. Yeah.
Those are all the non-SkyStriker Trickstar decks. So, well, quite the showing from this deck this weekend.
It is. I mean, it had a big advantage in numbers going in, but I expect it's got the highest win rate regardless.
Yeah. Well, we got a very good card in terms of countries from all over the world, not just Europe this time around, because we got a guy from Australia coming here and tearing the field apart. So now we're going to look at the absolutely intense duel between Germany and Austria. Sven Rebmann against Marcel Hansch. So let's take you guys to the feature match table and get our game on. All right.
All right, so we can't figure out who's going first yet because they haven't indicated it with the dice. But it looks like
Marcel Hansch is going
Marcel
first.
is going first, considering he's put a card on the table, and Marcel is with the pure striker.
Which deck is the favorite in this matchup?
Well, according to Matt and Luke, SkyStriker pure has been winning out.
And if you look at the deck list, is there something where you're like, okay, this is going to make the difference?
So one thing that jumps out at me is the copies of Deck Lockdown in the side deck for Sven, which is a very interesting card that saw some play. It's a card to know about, I think. I mean, it's not... It pops in and out. It used to be very popular with Constellar Pleiades because you could bounce it back to your hand and reuse it to get rid of the downside that it nukes itself after a couple of turns.
Yeah.
And that seems like quite a powerful card against SkyStriker because it not only shuts off Engage, but it also shuts off both effects of Area 0, both the Summon Array from your deck effect and the adding cards from your deck to your hand effect. But other than that, the Trickstar SkyStriker deck from Sven looks very similar to what Trickstar SkyStriker decks used to look like before. But he has sort of teched out to face the field of Pure Striker that he was probably expecting. So he's got 3 copies of Heavy Storm Duster in the main deck.
Right.
So that was one of the funniest cards you could play in Trickstar SkyStriker, because one of the common plays was to set your most important cards if they had a face down in order to play around the Trickstar reincarnation.
Yes.
So then if you had a card like Heavy Storm Duster or Twin Twisters, then you could activate that after your opponent set their most important cards, and all of a sudden they don't have them anymore.
That makes sense, yeah. So here, as always, hand trap is getting dropped in that case. It's Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. So important to have these hand traps early on.
Very important against the multi-roll. That's basically what Ghost Ogre is there for. It's the only target, but it just comes up almost every game if you have the Ghost Ogre. Pot of Desires is a card that many SkyStriker players decided not to play this weekend. So it's a bit of a strange one. It depends, I think, how long you think the game is going to go. So it gives you a stronger first turn, it gives you a stronger start. But the SkyStriker deck does like to run a few sort of tech one-offs that it likes to be able to search out of the deck. And there is a very real possibility that you can banish them with Pot of Desires. And you do feel even worse if your Pot of Desires is then hit with an Ash Blossom, as it was in this case.
Okay.
But a lot of... this is the first player I've seen playing Pot of Desires in their SkyStriker deck this weekend. But it has obviously got a big upside, which is that it draws you 2 cards and puts a spell in your graveyard.
All right.
So, despite the 2 hand traps coming down from Sven, I think Marcel is still not going to be out of options. So he has got the Hornet drones to get his SkyStriker Link engine going. So he'll still be able to use Ray, not Ray, the other one, Kagari. And then Kagari will be able to turn itself into a Shizuku, which will then be able to search Engage in the end phase and have him set up for next turn. Sven, on the other hand, has drawn an Engage straight away, but I don't think his deck makes quite as good use of the Engage as
it's not as good
deck does.
This is the Scapegoat, a card that we haven't seen the entire weekend, which is so hard to believe considering that this card single-handedly turned games around, like, I don't know, 3 months ago or something like that.
It needs to fit into a specific type of deck. And I think SkyStriker Trickstar enjoyed using it quite a lot. It made very good use of the Scapegoat, but other decks not so much. Yeah.
All right.
So I think it's just a case of, I think any deck that makes good use of it, there's no reason not to run it, really. Yeah, but the only downside is the number of extra deck spaces that it requires in order to support it.
But what we saw this weekend, there weren't that many decks, at least in the current field, that seem to make very good use of it.
Yeah, totally agreed.
Okay.
It has got that other downside of having to wait a couple of turns in order to use it. So, I mean, it is chainable, and we do see the jamming waves in Marcel's hand. So it's probably it might not get met with the jamming waves because there might be other good targets. So here we see the impact. Well, I suppose there is an Ash in Marcel's hand, but in the old ban list, there's no way you would leave up a copy of Shizuku by itself against the SkyStriker Trickstar deck.
Yeah.
Because they would be fully capable of OTKing you. So there was a very nice OTK if you had just an Engage and Engage or drones and a copy, access to a copy of Candina either through the field spell or just drawing the Candina.
Right. Yeah.
You could set up the Firewall Lilybell loop, but that did require the use of Nightmare Goblin, so that option is not available to Sven on this turn at least.
So we're probably not going to see that way of winning for Sven Rebmann. However, those 2 hand traps, they really threw a wrench in the whole train that was going to Austria Town for Marcel Hansch. So he's in a good position, but not in a great position. Or is it one of those situations, if it's his turn again, and Sven
it's going to look like he's in a good position, I think, once it gets around to his turn.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Sven's going to do as many things as Marcel did his turn.
So he's sacrificing some of the consistency in a way, adding the Trickstar engine to the SkyStriker deck, what do you gain in return?
You gain a lot more pressure on the opponent. So Trickstar does way more damage way faster than SkyStriker against an empty board. SkyStriker is often guilty of just doing 1,500, which is not really very many. When you have all these cards, all the cards in the world, and you do 1,500 damage.
Doesn't sound convincing.
No, it's not very convincing. So interesting that Marcel's chosen not to use the Ash on either the Engage or the Field Spell.
What is he waiting for then?
That's a good question. Some people like to hold the Ash on the Candina, because if Candina is the only card which allows you to search Reincarnation.
Right.
So they think, okay, so if you hold the Ash for that, there's no way they're going to have the Reincarnation. Or you can just hold the Ash all the way to the Reincarnation anyway. But then you've held it so long that they've got the benefit of the Reincarnation being in the graveyard.
Yeah.
So if you Ash the Field Spell and they just activate another one, then they'll be able to use that Candina to search a Reincarnation if Reincarnation is the card that you're worried about.
I see.
Or he might be holding it for a Pot of Desires, but I don't know if Sven is playing Pot of Desires.
So generally speaking, would you also play it that way, or would you have popped it earlier, dropped it earlier?
I mean, it's a bit of a gambit dropping it on the light stage, because it just trades for another light stage in your hand if Sven happens to have one. And if Sven had 2 light stages and Marcel hadn't used the Ash, then he's better off not using the Ash if Sven has 2 light stages. But if he's got only the 1 light stage, we know from this situation
we get perfect information
that it would have benefited Marcel way more to use the Ash on that first copy of light stage, because now he's got 2 searches, and if he just Ashes the Reincarnation, then he's got Reincarnation in the graveyard and Candina on the field that he otherwise just wouldn't have had if the Ash had come down.
I'm just looking over the names that we have here and trying to figure out how many guys we still have remaining in the field that won a YCS before or won something big before. And I'm pretty certain that Boden Temnik is the only guy that has won a big event before.
I think Erikos Beck won the Greek national championship.
Oh, okay.
Depends how big.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm not familiar enough with the Greek nationals or Greek metagame in general. But I think that's pretty much it. There's definitely nobody from one of the most recent events that won or came like to the finals or something like that. We saw a lot of players, good players, get kicked out in the top 64 and the top 32. We lost Marcello Barberi, we lost Thomas Rose, we lost Raphael Nevin. So quite a few guys that were favorites going into the top 64 made it this far, got kicked out. So we might be seeing some new blood this weekend with a new champion that hasn't won anything before.
It would seem that way, given we've got 15 players and only 16 players.
16 players and only one guy that really
one guy who's won a seriously major tournament in Berlin. Yeah. So this is really a great start for Sven. He's got the Mind Crush, which is going to be able to clip the Engage. Again, like I feel like holding this Ash for as long as he has cost him a little bit of tempo and board presence, but it is the safer play. But in this case, it may have been worth taking the risk, considering you'd already seen 3 cards from Sven's hand, so he only has 3 left. So then you're saying, well, what do you think? One of those, well, 2 of those 3 being ways to pick up a candy.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll find out. So he's not shotgunned the Mind Crush. I'm pretty sure he knows that there's an Engage in his hand. So I don't know what else he wants to hit with the Engage. A hit with the Mind Crush than Engage.
So, what about the Ash Blossom? Didn't get dropped at all. You don't agree, right?
I mean, I don't know what it's going to do much less than it would have.
What else is he waiting for? Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know why he's held it so long, if I'm going to be honest.
Okay. Well, that would be one of the list of possible questions we could be asking after that match. Speaking of questions that are going to be asked after this match, this is when we're going to have the top 8 player profiles once this round has concluded, which gives us a tiny little break for once today. And Rudy, who is taking care of the written coverage, is going to sit down with all of the 8 remaining players in the field, ask them a couple of questions, and you can find all of that and much, much more in the written coverage of this event. There's a link wherever you're watching this below. There's a link below. Let's just say that.
So has he got 3 spells in his graveyard is an important question. And I think the answer to that is yes.
Yes, here is the... Oh, sorry. According to this, he's got 1 spell in the graveyard. Sorry, you're talking about Marcel, right?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Marcel does have 3.
Marcel does have 3
Terraforming,
spells in
Forge.
his graveyard, so he is going to get a bonus draw. Which is what you want.
Yeah, you always want a little bonus. Even when you're ordering ice cream, you want a little bonus. So it's the same with Yu-Gi-Oh cards and decks.
It'll be interesting to see how Sven uses the interruption that he has.
If he uses the interruption.
If he uses it at all. I mean, Marcel didn't use any of his.
Yeah,
So-
maybe he thinks like, well, he didn't throw his hand trap, if he had one, because he doesn't know. Oh, speaking of which, 2 Ash Blossoms now in Marcel Hunch's hand. And
So he's got the jamming waves, which I don't know when he's going to choose to use the jamming waves. Considering he might wait until the mind, well, not the mind crush, the reincarnation, which he knows to be there, has been activated because he doesn't want to hit the reincarnation.
does
with
he
the
know
jamming
that the
waves.
Mind Crush is there? He doesn't, right?
He doesn't know the mind crush is there. No, the only thing he knows is the jamming wave.
Right.
Not the reincarnation.
Right, so Sven is in a pretty good position, or at least in a reasonable position, because at first it looked like there was,
Yeah, I don't think
There wasn't a
Sven
way-
should be unhappy.
and now there is
So
the Mind
now
Crush.
he's choosing to use the mind crush on engage, which is fair enough.
And
So mind crush on engage. I suppose if he's already taken the first search off engage, he probably was assuming that he wasn't going to be able to stop him picking up engage again. So he might as well let him do the first search until he shows him he's got the mind crush, and then deny him the second search.
right.
Makes some amount of sense if you're assuming that he can get to Kagari and pick up the engage again. So,
So now-
he
now-
searches without knowing that he's not going to get the second search.
Now Sven knows that there are 2 Ash Blossoms waiting for him. Is that going to affect the way he's playing in any way?
I don't think so.
It kind of does, because he just popped the Scapegoat.
He's popped the scapegoat in
I think that's
response
regardless of
to
the
the
Ash Blossom.
multi-roll.
Yeah.
Because now that the multi-roll has been triggered, he can't respond to something like a jamming waves or a twin twisters being activated on his face downs. So we have a look now to see if Marcel has included a copy of Hercules Base, and he has included a copy of Hercules Base. And Hercules Base is traditionally one of the best answers to Scapegoat, because it allows you to attack twice and clear 2 of the tokens in one go and get a draw for each, which is
Pretty good.
Draw 2, kill 2 of your opponent's cards. Why
Yeah.
not? But we don't know whether that was banished off the Pot of Desires and whether he can search it either.
Yeah. One day we're going to have like some electronic system that
Pot of
immediately
Desires can, yeah.
just looks at the card and immediately goes, ping! This is this card, got banished just now.
So Sven is even going so far as to use all of his back rows. So that just showcases, I guess, the power of multi-roll, forcing out. Well, it doesn't force them out, but it scares Sven into activating all of his face-down cards.
Right.
So now we see the Ash being used there. So, I mean, again, it is a question of whether you want to be safe or whether you want to possibly make the more impactful play. Because if he'd used the Ash before, then Sven wouldn't have had the Candina on the field or the reincarnation in the graveyard.
Right.
Or if he'd used it on the Candina, there just wouldn't have been the reincarnation in the graveyard, it just would have been in the deck. And the reincarnation in the graveyard can now be used potentially to bring back a Candina for later.
So how important is it for Marcel Hunch to wrap things up in this turn? Because Sven Rebmann has 2 copies of Engage waiting in his hand to be activated.
They're not going to come down anytime soon.
With all of those monsters
He does
on
have
the
a lot
field?
of monsters in his main monster zone yet. But it is definitely a good backup plan for Sven. He has only actually got the 2 targets in his deck. He's got... so the drones is already in the graveyard, so he's got 1 Widow Anchor and 1 Afterburner.
Yeah, that's one of the disadvantages when you go with the Trickstar SkyStriker version, I guess.
You can afford to run less. So that was the hit drones to 1 affected the Trickstar SkyStriker deck a lot more than the pure SkyStriker deck. Because the pure SkyStriker deck had a lot of search targets, and the Trickstar SkyStriker deck had only the... Well, it was very common to see Hornet drones at 3.
Yeah.
And then 1 or 2 other SkyStriker cards. But now you have to run some more.
Right, so it seems like Marcel Hunch is ready to pass here.
So this is really where the Trickstar deck excels, because if they're sort of going card for card, the only real difference is that Marcel is taking damage. And you can see, so Sven's not taking any damage, and Marcel took some hits last turn, and he's going to be taking 400 at the moment every time he activates a spell. But normally you have the Licorice on the field, which is doing 400 every time he adds a card from his deck to his hand.
Yeah, so not ideal for Sven Redman in terms of damage output, but then again, a little bit is better than nothing, of course.
A little bit is definitely better than nothing.
Yeah,
and we're going to see how he leverages his tokens against all of the face downs. And the first thing to do normally is to use the light stage and turn one of the face downs off. So you have the option to pick something you know off the multi-roll. Should we have a look at what the face downs are?
We should do that, yes. We got one multi-roll, Jamming Waves, Shark Cannon, Widow Anchor, and Engage. Basically like all the different cards that are being played in this deck.
So he knows the Engage face down off multi-roll, so he could have chosen that just for the sort of resource play, but if he wants to make the more aggressive play and shut down a possible defensive card, then that's what he's done. He's going to just pick one at random.
What if the random would have been
so Jamming Wave, it's not, because he knows where it is.
I know, but what if he would have rolled the die and the die said you need to put target Engage?
I don't think that would have been one of his selected options.
He would just say, okay, dice reroll.
Well, no, I think he would have randomly decided between the 3 face downs. He doesn't know where they are.
All right, so 2 tokens left the field, 2 link monsters hit the field, something we have seen before. Where's he going to go next?
I think the next step is normally to make a Nightmare Phoenix and activate its effect. And this almost always will get hit with the Widow Anchor, because Phoenix is going to both threaten to destroy a card of Marcel's and, more importantly, draw a card, I think, is why you activate the Widow Anchor here.
Yeah.
But having said that, it is his only real interruption at this point in time. So he may choose to hold it.
Okay. So let's see. Is the die going to come out again and decide on the target?
He's not. Has he not even used the effect?
It doesn't seem like it.
It does seem odd when your opponent has 5 face downs that you don't want to kill any of them. So the Shark Cannon is a better interrupt than you would normally think in this situation.
Did he use the effect now or not?
It doesn't look like it.
It doesn't look like it.
Yeah, the Shark Cannon is quite a good interruption here because it stops the... it can banish something in the graveyard that Reincarnation would bring out.
Attention, this is the main event. It's the end of the round. It's the end.
I don't know what the advantage is in not using the
Nightmare Phoenix?
The Nightmare Phoenix as opposed to the Nightmare Unicorn, because if the Phoenix resolves, then he gets to draw a card.
Oh, it did hit the Widow Anchor this time around.
And the Nightmare Unicorn represents more link materials to be stolen than the Phoenix. So if the Phoenix had been stolen, then he would have not. He still have the Link Karibo on the field to work with. So I think it may have been a...
Did we miss something here?
I don't think so. I don't see any reason why he couldn't have activated the Nightmare Phoenix. Now he is going to get to resolve a copy of Engage, and I think it will get him a draw. But there's still another Ash.
Yep.
So that's really, really not
This
what
is what
Sven
he
wants
saved
to
the
see.
ashes for.
Indeed. Well,
he was
like...
like...
he drew the second Ash
He was
for.
basically like looking like a fortune teller at his glass ball and something. He was like, in the future, I'm going to need this card even more than I need it right now.
Well, if he'd used the Ash last turn, even on the Engage, then Sven
Don't ruin
have
it.
had that Engage.
We had a moment just now. Don't ruin it.
Sorry, that's my jam. It's ruining moments. I don't know whether the light stage has shut off the Shark Cannon or the Jamming Waves.
So the reason that I'm being fed here, which is speculation, is that his hand was so important. Like everything in his hand was so important that he didn't want to use the Nightmare Phoenix.
But he used the Nightmare Unicorn. So
yeah, I'm just telling you what I got for the Nightmare Phoenix.
So I don't know why you'd prefer to use the effect of Unicorn rather than Phoenix. When the Phoenix
he was
would
aware
draw
of
you in your
he was
card.
aware of the Ash. Does that make a difference?
That might make a difference. That's a decent point. So it could have just been negated by Ash. But having said that, if he wanted to resolve the Engage, then he doesn't mind the Ash being used.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a puzzle.
It's a puzzle. I mean, that is a fair point, is that the Ash can negate the effect of a Nightmare Monster if it's coded.
Yeah.
It cannot negate the effect of a Nightmare Monster if it's not coded.
So now Sven...
This point is looking like the game has gone on for too long for the Trickstar player, really. Once the game goes back and forth a few times, you tend to sort of go, oh, hang on, how did the SkyStriker player end up with so many cards?
Yeah,
and I don't
it's
have
no
any
longer
left.
the burn damage is no longer important enough because Marcel Hansch has more than 1 life point, and as we know, that is enough to win a duel. And he's got infinite more cards, and that is a very exact mathematical term when you're staring down at least like 5 cards, and it's going to be a lot more in just a second.
Oh, yeah. It's going to start to get out of control for Marcel very fast. Well, depending on which way you're looking at it. But I think Sven is going to start to run out of cards very soon.
Well, some would say he has already run out of cards. I mean...
Yeah, he's got the 1 heavy Storm Duster, but realistically, with nothing to stop the Shizuku picking up a copy of Engage, he's going to be drawing more cards, and that's enough by itself to out the board, because Engage can search a Widow Anchor, take the Trisbania or the, what's-his-face, Unicorn, and make a Link 4.
Yeah. So at the moment, it's looking quite well for Marcel Hansch from Austria. He must be happy about his options here.
Oh yeah, for sure. So Sven shotgunning the heavy Storm Duster on what he knows to be Engage. And I cannot recall if Marcel actually has another copy of Engage in his graveyard.
Sorry.
Do we think so?
Who has?
Marcel.
Marcel.
Does he have an Engage in his graveyard?
Can bring that up. It's a lot of cards.
It's a big graveyard.
It's a big graveyard. But I don't see a single Engage in there. According to our app.
Fair enough. Well, in that case, he'll have to fetch one out of the deck using Hayate if he direly needs to. But he's doing some calculations here, so he might be able to use the resources.
We
in his
learned
hand
yesterday
just to try and
that's
attack
one of the
game
most
anyway.
effective ways to scare your opponent. You can also tell, like, he's writing down the life points like very, very tiny, and then when he's suddenly doing these calculations, he's using big numbers to show to his opponent something's going to happen very soon. And sometimes that can be enough to trigger your opponent, and he's going to shuffle up.
So yeah, we can see a Widow Anchor and a Shark Cannon for him. So that's already a lot of ways to summon some more monsters. And that can pick up Hornet... Is that Hornet Drones? I think it was Hornet Drones he just picked up. So between those 3, that's going to give him a load of Link materials.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably enough to make a Boral Sword, which is usually how these things go.
No, we haven't seen it that often. I think like one
Boral
time
Sword?
this weekend. Yeah.
Boral Sword has been how almost every SkyStriker game ends.
Yeah, at the end.
At the end.
That's why I stopped paying attention. I'm like, okay, this is over anyway.
Yeah, you think Boral Sword, it's time to attack the game now. Although he might not even need the Boral Sword at this point.
But you said they only poke for 1/5.
Indeed, but when you've got 2 Widow Anchors to take both of your opponent's monsters, if you pass, if you don't have any cards, then the SkyStriker deck can't really assemble that much damage, but they can take your cards and kill you with them.
So that concludes the first game. Marcel Hansch with his pure version of the SkyStriker deck takes the win. Sven Rebmann with his Trickstar version of the SkyStriker archetype falling behind, and now he has only 16 minutes left on the clock to sport a comeback.
If I'm going to be totally honest, I think they like having less time. The Trickstar deck is very good at doing little bits of damage.
So now the side decks are going to be playing a big role. What do you see coming in here?
So as I mentioned before, Deck Lockdown is a card that we've not seen, and I'm just guessing that it is there for SkyStriker because it shuts off Engage and it shuts off both effects of Area 0, which could be pretty nasty. And on the side of the pure SkyStriker, I'm not sure. He might side evenly matched if he thinks he's going second, which is a fair assumption.
Yep.
He might choose to side Twin Twisters, Yep. I mean, typically when you play against Trickstar SkyStriker, the back row is always chainable. So you can kill it with your back row removal, but if it's like a scapegoat, they just chain the scapegoat.
Yeah.
And it's good to be able to force out the scapegoat.
Yeah.
But it maybe not at the expense of your cards. You kind of want to make them do it anyway. You maybe just scare them into doing it rather than do it.
If you happen to go first and you can set a Twin Twisters, that could be good. But
that's pretty great, yeah.
That's
I'm not sure
like the one situation
that Hans will be banking on going first.
All right.
But yeah, my money is on the Deck Lockdown coming in for Sven. and possibly the Hey Trunade for when he goes second.
So we're just being fed some information here that Boden Temnik won with Altergeist. That means that SkyStriker Trickstar, the other version of SkyStriker Trickstar,
SkyStriker Trickstar.
SkyStriker Trickstar, my god, it's late. I'm working with American time zones here, basically. I'm feeling like it's 10 p.m. So he's got kicked out. That leaves us with yet another Altergeist player and yet another Burning Abyss player, and then we got the SkyStriker Trickstar, which we are seeing here in our feature match, and those are the only decks that are not
Trickstar.
the pure versions of
Trickstar, the other one.
SkyStriker.
SkyStriker,
Yeah.
indeed.
It's contagious.
It is. Oh, he's also got Shared Rides. Were they in his main deck? They were in his main deck. So Shared Ride is another very powerful card. And it's an even more powerful card for Trickstars because they put a lot more damage pressure on the board. So if you're running a SkyStriker Mirror, you might feel less upset about just passing.
Yeah.
But you can't really afford to do that against Trickstar. They will just put 8,000 damage on the board. Or even if they don't put 8,000 damage, if you take like 5,000 damage, then the burn effects start to become very intimidating.
Both of these players are starting with an Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring in hand. Not quite sure who's going first or who's going to be forced to go first in the case that Marcel is going to be forced to go first. But we assume that Sven Rebmann is going to go first here.
Yeah, my guess is definitely for Sven.
It's also his deck looks like he didn't take anything out that is really good at going first, obviously. And so he kicks things off with, of course, the Trickstar Light Stage.
I think you're very happy at this point if you're Sven with this opening hand. The Shared Ride is something that slows the SkyStriker deck down a lot. He does have the Ash Blossom, so if he's willing to hold the Ash Blossom, which we saw last game, he's willing to hold the Ash Blossom almost indefinitely, then it will be used on the Shared Ride eventually. But he's still got a good start, and this is what we saw a lot of last format, was where the SkyStriker has to do a lot of searching and stuff before it starts to take over the board.
Yep.
So by that time you've taken some damage, and often the SkyStriker's first turn setup is not the most threatening, and then it's kind of on the next turn that they really start to take over.
So basically there's always a window of
There's
opportunity.
sort of this one window.
Yeah, for the Trickstar SkyStriker, but they need to be aware of the fact that it's going to close very, very soon. And now the big question is...
In the case of, well, most decks, they need to do, like, all of the damage. But again, Trickstar, they need to do most of the 8,000 damage, and then possibly rely on the burn effects to end the game.
All right, so they're basically forced to go big or go home.
Exactly.
Marcel Hunch did actually side into those Twin Twisters.
He did side the Twin Twisters. I mean, the Twin Twister is very powerful if you have this multi-roll.
Yeah.
So multi-roll is a very, very threatening card. Because it says, look, I could play Twin Twisters now, and your back row now can't be chained.
Yeah.
Which is really mean.
But I think that Sven Rebmann is seeing the writing on the wall here. Or is he? Do you think he's going to activate something in response?
We're going to wait and see. So he's choosing now either to just use the back row that he would have used preemptively in case of Twin Twister, or he might choose to respond with the Heavy Storm Duster in order to just stop the multi-roll from resolving, which is what he's doing. And the question is whether he's using it on just the multi-roll or the multi-roll and the Area 0. So Heavy Storm Duster just being a pseudo-mystical Space Typhoon there, as opposed to its full glory of destroying 2. It's only destroying 1, but he's chosen not to destroy the other one because he'd rather that Marcel didn't get to summon a Ray. Which is... It depends whether you think Marcel's going to be able to trigger it himself.
Yeah.
Because if you think that he's going to be able to trigger it himself anyway, and he's going to want to, then you may as well just do it now and stop him from using the second effect.
All right, so Pot of Desire is getting ashed. No surprise there. Good news for Sven so far. Still got a field.
So yeah, I assume the Shared Ride is being used in response to the field spell activation. And the Ash was held.
There's another Ash. So turnabout is fair play. Both of these guys dropping the Ash.
And that is always the ideal hit, I think, off the field spell. It's the engage.
But he's thinking about it.
He is thinking about it.
Is he seriously thinking about it, or is he just claiming to be thinking about it?
I don't. The only benefit of not taking the engage and then just using it to pick up the multi-roll is that you take 400 less damage, as far as I can tell. But
Yeah,
that is what he's doing.
He doesn't seem to be that concerned about his life points. For the most part, it might be different this game.
I don't think I've ever seen someone pass up an engage off an area 0.
So watch and learn.
Watch and learn.
He's going to show you how it's done.
I think he should put his face down card in the graveyard. Because I think that's what area 0 does. Unless I missed something, but I'm pretty sure he should be putting his face down in the graveyard.
Come to the public event stage.
Can we just point that out to the judges, that the face down should be in the
public event stage.
And I think now the players are just checking whether he can use the second copy of multi-roll, which as far as I'm aware, he can. So the text of multi-roll says you can only gain this strange ability to not have your spells responded to once per turn.
Oh, sorry. The chat just points out he passed the engage because it would just be banished by reincarnation.
Yeah, but I mean...
But I mean...
Sven could choose to use the reincarnation anyway.
So you're not saying that's something that convinces you?
It doesn't convince me at all. I mean, if you're saying I'm just going to pick something worse so my opponent doesn't get rid of it. I mean, Engage could search reincarnation. Sorry, Engage could search multi-roll. So if Sven was scared of the multi-roll, he can activate the reincarnation in either case. I mean, it means that the Engage is now in the deck as opposed to banished, but I don't know why you wouldn't rather just force out the reincarnation. I don't know why you would deliberately take a worse card so your opponent doesn't respond to it, when your opponent can respond to the worst card anyway.
It's all a big mind game.
It is all a big mind game. I think that card should definitely be in the graveyard, though, the face-down card for Marcel, because it was chosen for Area 0, and Area 0 does send the card to the graveyard on resolution.
Yeah, we passed it on as much as we could, and our judges are... I'm not sure what is happening exactly.
They're checking whether you can use the effective multi-roll again, the one that targets a card and then makes your spells unable to be responded to. And it says on the text of multi-roll that you can only gain this effect once per turn. And because it didn't resolve properly last time, it being a continuous spell, it has to be face up on the field when it resolves in order to have any effect. I think he is allowed to use it again, and that is what the judges decided as well.
Right.
But it is still bugging me that he has a face-down Mystical Space Typhoon that should have been sent to the graveyard. Unless I did something wrong.
Please come to the public event stage.
And another short piece of updates that I just received is that Jonas Koschel is going into the top 8, which is big news because he was undefeated.
That's pretty good.
So he is currently on a 15-0 run. That's quite something, and doesn't seem to be able to be stopped this weekend. He's just going through it, tearing through the field.
So we saw the Hayate attack directly and use his effect to send SkyStriker Widow Anchor from his deck to his graveyard. Again, he's neglecting to add Engage. So if he'd gone via Engage, he would have got some extra draws. Yeah, I'm not sure why he's not doing this.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how he sent the Hayate to the graveyard either.
Yeah,
a lot of things going over my head here.
They are...
yeah, so the Hayate looked like it attacked directly.
No, the judges are now double-checking all the effects with the Area 0 and everything. Another question that just popped up. So now that it has been resolved correctly, another quick question from the chat.
How did the Hayate go to the graveyard? That's my question. Okay. Is that the question from the...
No, that wasn't the question. The other thing that was asked, if there's another undefeated player, no, there is not. Jonas Koschel is the only undefeated player in the entire tournament. Regarding the Hayate, I can try to double check
tell us why the Hayate is in the graveyard. Or how was it sent to the graveyard?
We're going to find that out too.
Because if it was just Link summoned, then... If it was just linked away, then it shouldn't have gone via Ray, and it shouldn't have been the battle phase for Sven anymore.
Battle Phase 2? Question mark. No, there is no Battle Phase 2. Not in this deck, at least.
Yeah, perhaps he switched into Valkyries. But I don't know what they would do at this point in the game if that was discovered. I mean, it would just mean that the Trickstar Lycris was still on the field and Sven had some more life points.
Come on, guys. Don't hate us for not featuring Jonas Koschel. Jesus. He's undefeated. That means we can feature him next round. We knew that he was going to win this round.
Exactly.
I mean, he did it 15 times or 14 times before this round.
We have a very complicated selection process, and it just didn't pick him.
Yeah. Our die was never landing on Jonas Koschel.
Exactly.
It's a it's a die with 2,356 sides.
And then we knock a couple off every round.
Exactly, yeah. We're just gonna like carve it into the die we need. All right.
So we see... I didn't see what was added for the Shizuku. Or what was set for the multi-roll. Should we see what cards he has on the field?
Yeah, we got both of these guys' cards on the field here. It's gonna pop up very soon. Yeah, we're gonna get there.
So I think he knows one of them to be set from a multi-roll, which is the one that he's chosen. And the Ash now this time being used immediately on the Candida. According to our app, Sven has drawn Heavy Storm Duster for turn, which isn't really going to allow him to make any very exciting plays this turn. Or in fact, no plays this turn. So again, it looks like, as I've said before, once the SkyStriker deck has
the advantage when
it doesn't tend to give
the distance.
Yeah.
It is the marathon runner going up against the sprinter, and for some reason nobody said, okay, you reached the goal, sprinter, after those 10 seconds for 100 meters. So now, slowly but steadily, Marcel Hansch is overtaking his opponent here. Which is good news for Austria. We haven't had an Austrian YCS winner in a while. And by in a while, I think I mean ever. Somebody's going to be mad at me after this comment. But I can't remember.
I mean, having said that, there's only 3 minutes left. So again, it's only in the case that Marcel is unaware of the time. But it might be that if he's not paying enough attention to the time, that Sven might steal a game that he was otherwise going to take. Because if he doesn't enter his battle phase within 3 minutes, then he won't be able to do any damage.
We have seen that exact same thing.
He will have taken some damage
in the round before, where it was like a race to battle phase, basically, and only if the player makes it to the battle phase.
He has to know that that's what's going on. I don't know what awareness the players have of the time.
Well, the thing is, like, if they know, you see them indicating it by making gestures that are basically saying, speed up please, speed up please. It needs to be my turn very soon. Both of these guys they have been picking up the pace a tiny little bit the last few minutes.
In the situation where he knows he has to do damage, I mean, I don't know why he wouldn't then have used the Twin Twisters in his opponent's end phase, just even though it's not maximum value because it's only on one card, it just ensures that you're going to be able to force through some damage, because we know that Sven's got no cards in his hand, so if you're destroying the set, then they're going to have no possible interruptions.
Yeah, that's good to know. That's something that he really like. Oh, okay.
It's like, great.
Now I'm feeling good about this.
Now I'm feeling good, and then he can just make a big Link monster and attack over one of... Even if he'd hit the Reincarnation, which does do something in the graveyard, it doesn't stop you attacking over your opponent. Yeah. Just for some damage, enough to put yourself ahead on life points at the end of time.
What's his name? Jesus Christ. There's an Austrian YCS champion. He won with...
Peter Gross, maybe?
No,
he's quite a famous one.
He's also one. Yes,
I think he may have won more than one.
Yeah, he did. And I also... Dong Lao, of course. Is that the name I got?
Long Dao.
Long Dao. Dong Lao, oh my. He's never going to forget about that. He won with...
Just hope he's not listening.
A 50-something card deck.
50,000 card
mermaids. Yeah. And that was before Gross's screener, or that Gross's screener.
So I think...
It's all coming back now. It's just a little bit late.
That...
No, my God, I'm so sorry, Austria. I'm sorry. The chat has having fun now. That's good.
Was not paying too much attention to the time here.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it. We need to get to battle phase, guys.
He's used his battle phase and he hasn't done enough damage. Oh, he has done enough damage. The life points keep updating.
Yeah, they do.
But he keeps searching cards. What's in his hand? An area 0 and an engage. So he's chosen not to use the engage. So maybe that is
Attention duelists of the
a point to the life points.
Yeah.
on the round in the Mega Regional.
So it's time on the round in the Mega Regionals. It's going to be time on the round in the top 16, at least in our feature match very soon too. I think the rest of the field actually concluded their round 15 minutes ago, something like that. So there's a very good chance that everybody that's still in the venue and isn't playing right now is watching this match.
So
And
we see the twin twisters being used here. So again, if he just used it in the end phase, it would have been probably better value because now the
now Sven Rebmann is
Duster
clearing
can be
the back side. He's ahead in life points.
so he's
Marcel
ahead in
Hansch
life
is
points. So I think
4,700.
this game is definitely going to end up.
Well, if he
going
manages
to
to stall his turn a little bit enough, right? Or
I mean,
can
there's
he-
20 seconds left. There's no way his turn is going to end within 20 seconds.
Who knows? Maybe he's going to be like a
Maybe
gentleman.
he's just
and
gonna go
say,
pass
Yeah,
now,
pass.
right now.
I don't want to attack now.
I don't want to attack directly with my Lily Bell for 800 damage.
It's too much for my heart here.
He's moving very fast.
Yeah, he is. He wants
Maybe
to go to the
he
battle
thinks
phase.
the life
Battle
points are
phase?
different to what they are.
He did say battle phase, didn't he? No, he didn't. He just said pass. So the game is going to end now in this phase, which is very likely the draw phase of Marcel Hansch.
I don't know why he went so fast rather than just attack.
Maybe he was forced, like, this sounds a bit weird, but maybe he was forced to play really fast. So nobody would say, hey man, you're stalling on purpose, you're slow playing.
Yeah, I don't think it's too unreasonable to attack
No,
directly with your monster.
Now,
For 800
maybe
damage.
it all happened to so fast that the guys that are operating the apps didn't have time to enter the new life points.
So yeah, I mean it starts to become, but he was ahead on life points clearly.
Yeah,
So
he was ahead.
I don't know why. I don't know in what situation you wouldn't want to attack to do even more damage and get even further ahead on life points and give your opponent less time.
I can't come up with anything, but then again, I'm the guy that just missed out a couple of guys' names. Forgot about that Austrian player that won 3 YCS
A
tournaments.
fair number of YCS tournaments.
2 back-to-back in different formats. It's also a really nice guy, by the way.
Oh yeah, he's great.
Yeah, hi Peter.
Haven't
Yes.
seen him for a while.
Yeah, but he keeps claiming he stopped playing the game and then he comes back. He was one of those guys who brought Cosmo to Rimini when there were only like 4 Cosmo cards released. And
I remember that.
That was one of his comebacks from a break, and he ended up in the top 8 of that tournament. So this is like
Oh yeah.
all you need to know about Peter Gross. He's one of the all-time greats. I didn't wanna throw him under the bus. I'm very sorry, Austria. I'm so sorry. I know we don't always get along, we Germans and Austrians, but this is not one of those occasions. I love you all, Austrians. Please don't come at me.
Traditionally, well, the Trickstar SkyStriker deck, given the Trickstar cards,
Yeah.
would have a big advantage in the timeout.
Yeah.
But SkyStriker does have
3 is enough. I mean,
the
Sven Rebmann can go first.
Hayati, which is a new tool to do a bit of extra damage. But before that, there was almost no way for them to do that much damage early on in the game. And in fact, this is looking like a very strong hand for Sven. So we've got an Engage, a Shared Ride, a Candina.
Yeah, so people are asking, is it first damage? No, it is not. We are gonna see 4 turns. 4 turns in the timeout.
Could you imagine first damage, Trickstar, summon Licorice, pass?
Yeah, that would be a great idea. Don't give them ideas, my friend. Don't give them ideas. So no, everybody gets 2
No.
turns,
Yeah, they get 2
unless
turns
somebody's
each,
life points
unless
are
the
0.
game has ended normally.
Stop interrupting me.
Sorry.
So yeah, Trickstar goes first, and that's a big advantage here.
Oh yeah, so it gives him a turn to set up the Shared Ride, as well as all of the other stuff that he's going to set up. So this is very reminiscent of the Trickstar SkyStriker openings of last format.
And we have 1 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring in Marcel's hand.
So Marcel has held it through the Engage, which I think is fairly standard, because it's sort of generally assumed that the SkyStriker cards are not as important as the Trickstar cards. So he may choose here, because there's only going to be the 1 turn, well, it's only going to be a couple of turns, not to try and get maximum value out of the Ash and take the risk of using Ash straight on the Candina, because this is the difference where you might be, you know, if the light stage is activated, which you would almost certainly search off the Candina, that's going to do a few hundred points of extra damage. So it's more risky to do so, but in this case, it's the sort of thing you're going to want to do.
This is not the most explosive start that the Trickstar deck can have.
It's basically the most explosive start in the Trickstar.
Is it?
Yeah.
Because I'm looking for the light stage. There's no light stage, for example.
I mean, light stage is one of the extra pieces, but generally, Engage Candina are the 2 cards that you want in your opening hand. Those are the things that Trickstar SkyStriker does on its first turn.
Okay.
And the Candina, although it doesn't do as much damage as Licorice, it is going to do some small points of damage.
Yeah,
So
every little bit counts in this situation.
every little bit definitely counts, indeed.
All right, so Marcel Hunch, we kept telling this. If the game goes a little bit longer, if he sees a couple more turns, he's always going to be the favorite winning this.
Yeah.
This
However,
is a very different situation.
Yeah. The
There's
game will not go those long turns. It's guaranteed to end on turn 4.
Yeah,
Or before.
in that case, yes. Actually, there is an Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring in Sven Riedmann's hand. I was about to say,
But
no
that
interaction.
shared ride is going to be seriously upsetting for Marcel.
That shared ride is
here.
good news if you're rooting for Sven Riedmann's Trickstar
If I'm honest,
SkyStriker.
I definitely agree with using the Ash on the Candina in the timeout situation. But here we see why he was not doing it. I mean, it's a risk.
Yeah.
And we see why he was not doing it because of just how much the shared ride is going to hurt him on this turn. Because shared ride on terraforming is basically the best you can ask for.
Yeah.
Because almost all field spells searched
These
want to
days.
then search another card.
Yeah.
Like Area Zero, like Light Stage, Spiral Resort, Draconic Diagram, basically every field spell ever.
So, and he does, of course, have the Candina on the field, so that means extra burn, little beep, bit by
A
bit.
little bit. So this would have been 400 per spell if he'd not ashed. So I think may have been a sort of pick your poison kind of thing. He would have been taking a lot of damage either way. Or he would have either been taking damage or giving Sven a lot of cards. And
Yeah.
neither of those are really things you want to do.
So, wow. Sven Riedmann put himself in a really good position here. It was very close. He, like the last game, just ending in time. He was ahead. Now he's in the timeout. Both players are going to play 2 turns. He finished his first turn. Good opening, not the best opening. You said it's one of the better
I would say it's one of the better openings.
one of
yeah.
the better openings, especially in the timeout here. And now his opponent Marcel Hunch is trying to assemble the pieces, but assembling the pieces is going to cost him life points thanks to that Trickstar Candina. And it's ticking down his life points bit by bit. Now, where's he going to go here? What's his end goal?
What's his end goal? I mean, currently he's going to summon a ray off of the Area Zero.
Now the Ash comes down.
So the Ash is just going to negate that. I mean, maybe a bit preemptive, but Area Zero is one of the few ways that SkyStriker initially have to actually put some monsters, summon a few monsters, like summon more than one. So
Yeah.
the usual plan is just normal summon Ray.
Yeah.
And Area Zero is one of the few cards at the beginning of the game that can get an extra monster on the field. So that's probably why he chose to Ash it. I mean, holding your resources in a game that only lasts 4 turns is probably, you don't need maximum value, you need maximum sort of impact right now.
Yeah.
So I can see why you would choose to do that. But it does feel a bit sad when you use an Ash and then the next card your opponent plays.
So now he's targeting the Trickstar Reincarnation, which is not going to get chained.
That's interesting. Oh, he can't chain it. Seems fair enough.
Yeah.
There was a multi-roll.
That's
so
cool.
actually, to me, that does make perfect sense that he used the Ash. Because he wasn't going to be able to use
Yeah.
Ash, Engage, or Desires anyway. So Sven was making an even better play than I was talking about.
So Marcel has got rid of a little bit of the field, but the Reincarnation can bring Candina back, of course. He knows that, obviously. There's no
He
question
does.
about it. So now he's using the Widow Anchor, and
I'm
then
wondering if he's actually going to be able to do any damage. Because Reincarnation is in the graveyard, and so when the Shizuku attacks... Well, I suppose he can first of all do some Link Summons, which is better. Forgot about that. It's quite good, that.
it's a thing.
Normally, Widow Anchor, you expect to take... you expect it... When you take your opponent's monsters not in the mirror match... Why did he not Oh, that's an interesting decision. So he chose not to add anything back from his graveyard because he didn't want to give his opponent an extra draw off Shared Ride. But that is at the expense of adding the Widow Anchor and stealing the Candina that came back off Reincarnation and doing some 2,000 damage or something.
So Sven Rebmann was playing defense, like 100% defense in that turn. Didn't take any damage. However, Marcel Hansch is gonna have a second turn, unless Sven Rebmann is gonna be able to dish out 7,200 damage on his following turn. It doesn't look like it yet,
It doesn't
does
look
it?
like. I mean, he has got 2 copies of Engage.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many spells he has in his graveyard. He's definitely got the 1 Hornet Drones.
Yeah, it's 1 Hornet Drones as a... that's it. A Shared Ride. Shared
Oh,
Ride, Hornet Drones.
That's a really horrible draw. That's a really horrible draw, that Widow Anchor.
I mean, and he's... Yeah, the 2 copies of Engage.
So Widow Anchor has been drawn for
Is
the
he out of
Shared Ride in
targets
the
now?
end phase. So yeah, so he's got 2 of them. So he had 2 targets, and that was one of them.
Yeah, all right. So
I mean, worse than that, it's not just that it's a dead card, but if he'd searched it with the Engage, he would have got a draw to go with that.
Yeah.
So it's a -2. Drawing that card is a -2.
So he shouldn't have activated
He shouldn't have
Shared
activated
Ride.
the Shared Ride. No, that was definitely his mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good card, Widow Anchor, but in this situation, not at all what you wanted to draw.
Speaking of Shared Ride, Marcel Hansch has a Shared Ride face down now. And he... Yeah, so much for that.
If I'm completely honest, I'm not sure Sven cares.
Right.
He's just going to do as
You
much
think-
damage as he can.
He's in a situation where he needs to dish out as much damage and nothing changed. If his opponent is drawing a million cards or not, nothing
Exactly.
changes.
In fact, he might be able to do more damage by making his opponent draw cards when he has a Licorice
Oh,
on the
okay,
field.
yeah, good point, good point.
But I mean, it will give Marcel more tools to do damage with. But SkyStriker, once they have enough cards, most of their tools are once per turn. Well, not all of them, but the Area 0 to Summon Array is once per turn. Which is, I mean, it has some tools, but I think at this point he's probably just not going to care.
Yeah. So how much distance can he put between himself and Marcel Hansch? How much life points are you going to be able to take out here?
So I think he knows the 2. Can we bring up the 2 sets?
Yes. We got
So I think
Jamming Waves, Widow Anchor.
yeah. So he knows
And
one
a-
of the sets was Widow Anchor.
And there's a
So
Pot of
it's-
Desires.
I
not
think,
doing anything.
yeah. So he's got the decision now as to whether he takes the 50-50 shot on the cards that were set by the multi-roll. Hope he gets the Widow Anchor, which will allow him to push through way more damage than he would otherwise be able to push through this turn. Or he could simply accept the fact that he's going to try and play through 1 Widow Anchor and see how much damage he can do, and give himself no unknowns.
Do you agree with the reincarnation on the last turn?
He didn't use the reincarnation.
No, to bring back a monster,
Oh,
to block the attack.
yes, I think so.
Okay.
Saving yourself.
It's not like you
1800
got
damage
more
on
use out of
time.
it now.
I don't see that.
Okay.
So we don't know whether Widow Anchor was hit for Sven. So Sven hit one of 2 cards, and we don't have any laser vision to see which card that was, unless maybe Marcel lifted it up enough for us to see it. But it turns out that it was the Jamming Waves.
Yeah.
So here we see the nice play of chaining Widow Anchor to your opponent's Widow Anchor to negate the effect of your monster before their Widow Anchor can negate its effects.
And then it cannot be stolen.
And then it cannot be stolen because
Yeah.
Widow Anchor must negate the effect of a monster in order to
now
steal
he
it.
got the Widow Anchor out of the way,
He has got the Widow Anchor out of the way,
but he doesn't have his own anymore.
but I think he would have just rather that it wasn't there in the first place.
Yeah. But that's not how the game works.
That is not how the game works.
That's not how the Force works.
A ray. No, there is no ray in Marcel's graveyard, so this afterburner is going to be more impactful than it otherwise would.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got the option to destroy the multi-roll or take a gambit and destroy the face-down card. This is a genuinely quite tough decision, and unfortunately...
Took out the pot.
He's going to know it's the... Well, it's not the wrong decision, to be fair, because normally the SkyStriker deck would not consider using a second copy of Pot of Desires, because you can't afford to banish 20 cards in a long game.
Yeah.
However, it's not going to be a long game. He knows he's just going to try and win the game next
Yeah.
turn, so he probably would have activated it next
Well,
turn, to be fair.
he has to win the game the next turn.
We has to do damage the next turn, indeed.
So,
Yeah.
so Sven currently ahead on 800 life points.
And yeah, I think he's just deciding whether he's going to summon the Lily Bell and attack, or set the Lily Bell.
He's got a Widow Anchor. That's gonna allow him to prevent some damage next turn, very likely.
He doesn't have a Widow Anchor, that's an engage. That engage is completely useless.
Doesn't he also hold an engage according to the... No, according to
He
the app.
used the Widow
He just
Anchor.
used the Widow Anchor. Okay, sorry. Shouldn't believe the app. I should just
Shouldn't
trust
believe-
my eyes. No,
Yeah.
now it's gone. It's like
He's-
somebody was listening.
Ah. What target has he got? Did he just search a Ray? He's got a Ray in his deck. I didn't realize he had a Ray in his deck.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty handy. I was only
That
looking at his
changes
spells.
everything, because
That does
now he
change
gets
everything.
to draw from the engage. Is that a Mind Crush? That is a Mind Crush?
That was a big turnaround that I wasn't expecting, even though I had his deck list in front of me. The idea of Trickstar SkyStriker, because normally they want to use the normal summon for Candina.
Yeah, he doesn't.
But
He
he's
likes
like, yeah,
attacking with
whatever.
Ray.
Oh, wow. That is a big
That's a
swing.
big swing, yeah. Suddenly Sven Rebmann with a sneaky card, sneak onto his deck list in the top 16.
Yeah,
No,
he
I'm just
I
making
don't know
up stuff.
when he put that there, yeah.
Yeah, it's been there all
In
around.
between when I looked at his deck list a few minutes ago, and then when I look at it now,
It's
a
here.
Ray has appeared on his deck list.
Yeah, a Wild Ray appeared. And that suddenly can make a big difference.
I mean, that Ray's going to be able to swing for
5,700.
3,000 damage
Yeah, 5/7
and
for
allow
Marcel
him to
Hunch
pick up
at
a
the
Widow
moment.
Anchor from his graveyard.
And that Widow Anchor.
And it's going to give him a SkyStriker monster, which, if destroyed or sent to the graveyard by the effect of either of Marcel's card effects, will then be able to bring back the Ray for further defense.
Yeah, so
So between all of those things,
turned the tides.
that's done a lot of things. So that
And how
choice-
important is that? I mean, he also got the Mind Crush. I can totally see the Mind Crush playing a bigger role here. If his opponent gets to search something, he's just gonna rip it off his hand.
Exactly, yeah.
Foil that plan on top. So suddenly Sven Rebmann is sitting in a really good position with that one card.
I would say he's still fairly nervous. I would still
He
be
is.
fairly nervous if I were him.
I'm certain that both of these
But
guys.
having that one card in his deck.
I'm certain that he's just gonna be like, I'm so happy that I put this on my deck list. So he sets those two cards. It's a Widow Anchor, it's a Mind Crush. Both of these cards really good right now. Marcel Hunch lost almost half of his life points. Now enters his very last turn, and he needs to deal at least 3,800.
Shall we check if there's any SkyStriker spells for multi-roll to bring back in Marcel's graveyard?
So
I don't recall.
here we
if there
see
are.
the area
There's
0,
an area 0.
and that's it.
So he could bring back the area 0 if he wanted to.
Let's go back to his hand. He needs a good draw.
And I guess that's what he's doing. Yeah, I don't see why not. So it gives you a free thing just to hit immediately off the multi-roll.
Which would, in theory, allow Sven to activate the Mind Crush, but that's not the target. Oh, sorry, it goes to the field.
Yeah, it goes to the
Yeah, it
field.
goes to the field. Forget everything I'm about to say. So this is it, the last
Already
turn.
done. Yeah.
Marcel Hunch. Yeah, they're just getting rid of the dice. They're like, we're not going to need this dice anymore.
Just time. It's only time that
It's
matters.
got an Ash Blossom. Not going to be very relevant here, is it?
Yeah.
Called by the
he's
grave.
gone ahead and activated the.
Not going to be relevant here. He's got an Engage,
Called by the
Hercules
grave
base.
would have been relevant if Sven had a hand trap, so he'll probably keep it in hand
Yeah,
for that.
like I
purpose.
said, not here.
He could also banish Ray from the graveyard, which could be relevant.
All right, so he gets to search something, add something to his hand. Now there is an opportunity for Sven Rebmann to pop the Mind Crush.
There is not,
Why not?
because if he calls Widow Anchor is a quick play spell. It can be chained.
Okay, so it wouldn't be a good opportunity, but it would be an opportunity to see the hand of his opponent.
Granted, but he could have done that in the standby phase if he really wanted to.
Ah,
There's always an opportunity to activate Mind Crush
if you have a card in hand.
if you have a card in hand. I think your opponent has to have one too.
Yeah. All right, so he's going for something else. What is his game plan here?
What is his game plan? I assume he's going to proc the multi-roll and hope his opponent activates both face downs, because then it makes life a lot easier. Because being able to plan when your opponent doesn't have any responses is much easier than being able to plan when your opponent does have a response.
Of course.
He knows there's a Widow Anchor face down. He doesn't know what the other card is.
Yeah.
I think as far as he's concerned, probably if the other card is Scapegoat, he's going to really struggle to get
Yeah,
through a
I don't
Scapegoat.
see him doing 3-8 or more when there's a Scapegoat.
So he's probably going to be more happy than sad if any of his cards get Mind Crushed.
Yeah, just because it's the lesser of two evils.
And Sven's preempting the Mind Crush. I'm not sure what he's Mind Crushing.
Maybe he is...
He's Mind Crushing the
he
Widow
is-
Anchor.
See, I told you it's the pro play. Now-
Okay.
And it didn't get
He
activated?
didn't chain it. Did he have
See?
3 spells in his graveyard?
I told you this is the correct way. You just confuse your opponent, play the Mind Crush.
How many cards? Were there enough spells in his graveyard?
According to
steal
the
the
app,
monster?
no. No. Oh, sorry, Terraforming Pot of Desire, Shared Right.
Oh, loads. So, I mean, he might not want to activate the Widow Anchor if he was only going to negate the effect and not steal.
Yeah.
But if he was going to steal it, I'm not sure why he did that, and I'm not sure why it wasn't chained.
Well, I'm quite proud of myself for calling that preemptively. I should
not sure
start
you
my
should be.
fortune teller career. No, I should be.
I'm not sure you should be.
These are the hard things to call in advance. You're only calling the good plays in advance. I'm also calling the bad plays in advance. This is like the real skill of a real fortune teller, my friend.
I suppose that is true. I'm only calling this things that are, well, not obvious, but logical. Maybe at least one step rather than 4 or 5 steps ahead to not chain that and not make your opponent discard a card from their hand. And not take your opponent's
Is it that he
Kagari.
couldn't respond because of multi-roll? Is that correct?
I mean, no.
No. You can just chain to
It was
it.
Marcel's multi-roll
Yeah.
that would prevent Sven from responding to his spell cards.
Maybe he just wanted to get a new one.
I mean, he could have had he still would have been able to get a new one.
Yeah, but in a different way.
No, it's the same way. I suppose he wouldn't have been able to activate any more spells for a second while he's had the Kagari on his field. He would have had to link summon with the Kagari first.
There's a lot of pressure on Marcel Hunch right now.
That's fair enough.
Cut him some slack.
I'll cut him some slack.
He must have some sort of plan to dish out that much
I
damage.
mean, I think he still is probably fairly confident he's going to win the game here.
You think so?
Well, he can activate... Oh, what's he got in his hand? Has he
He's
got any tools to win
Ash
the game?
Blossom, Called by the Grave, Widow Anchor, Shark Cannon,
And he's got an Engage.
and Engage.
Yeah, I would say he has more than enough tools to win the game.
You think he can deal that much damage?
So yeah, he's going to use Afterburner, and when he activates Afterburner, there will be now no longer any opportunity for... So Afterburner... Well, he could get Afterburner, let's see. He's going to have to do some calculations. So if he can take something like Afterburner, he can just force out the Widow Anchor. And then he no longer has to worry about it. But he's decided he's going to do something else. So using the multi-roll will lower the effectiveness of the Widow Anchor, because it will mean Sven can't chain his own Widow Anchor to it, which would be a good way of playing around.
So the new theory is that he would have put the monster that he gets with the Widow Anchor in his main monster zones, which means he cannot activate Engage. What do you
He
think
could
about
have
this
He could
theory?
have just switched out his Kagari for Shizuku in his extra monster zone.
So you're still not happy with
I'm
my...
definitely not happy with
I'm
that.
giving you so many good explanations and you're just discarding them all.
I don't think that's a good explanation. I think it's he didn't realize he could do that.
Twitch chat, did you hear that? Tom Payne hates you.
I didn't say that.
That's exactly what he just expressed.
I just said
It just took
I
a few
don't
more
think
words.
that's a good explanation.
Yeah, you just lost half of your fan base here.
All of them.
It's like a nuclear explosion in the middle of your fan base. All right. So still, Marcel Hunch needs to go to places, needs to go to town,
It's
as
quite
Luke likes to
amusing. You
call
get
it.
this silly situation when after time has been called,
They're playing longer than before time has been called.
you don't have any pressure on you to go faster.
Yeah. You cannot take
I
forever.
mean, activating Foolish Burial Goods doesn't really serve any purpose for him, other than possibly making a Kagari on his field 200 attack points stronger. He's not going to draw any cards this second, so I'm not. Yeah, doing that now is just kind of It might make one of his monsters 200 points stronger.
So
It's
Marcel,
interesting to see where he goes with this. He only has to play around the Widow Anchor, and he knows that's a Widow Anchor.
yeah,
He's got Caught by the Grave in hand, so he doesn't have to think about any possible hand traps, except for a possible side frame gear gamma, I guess. If you thought your opponent was playing that.
You
But
would have
at
played
this point,
differently.
I think you would lose to the gamma anyway, because it's something that negates a monster effect and then summons 2 further monsters.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure you can really afford to think about that unless you're being very, very thoughtful.
I wouldn't want to sit in Sven Rebmann's place. He's just watching this at the moment. Not much
Yeah,
he
he
can
must
do.
be very tense. I mean, he has got the Widow Anchor, so he has to choose when he's going to use the Widow Anchor.
He's just like, okay.
So I'm interested to see what Marcel... I mean, I feel like Marcel has enough tools at his disposal to be able to effectively play around the Widow Anchor. So he could have searched Afterburner, used Afterburner. So if he'd chained the Widow Anchor in the first instance, then Sven's card would have been discarded for Mind Crush because he wouldn't have had a Widow Anchor in his hand.
Yeah.
Then he would no longer have to worry about the... he could have used the Call by the Grave to deal with the Ray. So he could have activated Afterburner, searched Afterburner off engage, activated after... Well, either would have forced Sven to activate the Widow Anchor immediately, or just let it die to the Afterburner on Kagari, and then destroy the Widow Anchor, and then all of a sudden there are no cards left. Then Call by the Grave on the Ray, and now all of a sudden Sven has absolutely nothing. So then all he has to do is assemble the requisite damage, which I think could just be done by normal summoning Ray, attacking with Ray, and then tributing it off for Kagari.
So now Marcel Hunch has 2 copies of Widow Anchor. He just got 1 back.
So between all of those things, I think he could have just... I think that line would have won him the game. But that line is no longer available to him because he didn't chain the Widow Anchor.
Yeah, took a wrong turn here.
So he could have chained the Widow Anchor just to negate the effect and leave Kagari on his opponent's side of the field.
Yeah.
And then just force Sven to discard a card. So even if you decided that you didn't want the monster... Oh, he also could have used Shark Cannon to banish Ray rather than Called by the Grave. So the fact that his opponent's still got a card in hand is basically irrelevant.
Yeah. Sven Rebmann just double-checking the Shark Cannon. It's not the card you see every turn.
It's not every turn, but it is quite a popular card.
Yeah, or every round. Yeah.
I think it's in most of the deck lists because it's a very helpful card in the SkyStriker mirror match.
So when is Sven Rebmann gonna use his own Widow Anchor here?
I think ideally he would wait until the battle phase, but other than that, he's going to wait until it's just forced to be used.
But if like Marcel gives him an option to wait until the battle phase, something went very wrong.
If you have the Widow Anchor face down during the battle phase, it becomes very difficult for your opponent to damage you because they can pick your monster with the highest attack and take control of it.
And with the second copy of Widow Anchor that Marcel Hunch has, he can of course play around the opponent's Widow Anchor by just negating his own monster's effect.
Assuming he has no monsters in his main monster zone.
Oh yes, that's important actually, because
so he has to keep in mind,
at the moment that doesn't look very likely.
Yeah, he has to keep in mind as well that the Kagari that he's taken can't attack. And in fact, we should stop the judges here because he wasn't... Oh no, that's wrong. The Kagari was taken by Widow Anchor, so it can attack, yeah. Sorry, I thought he summoned it off Shark Cannon, but he didn't summon it off Shark Cannon. The Candino summoned off Shark Cannon.
Oof. This match is taking forever. How is this possible? We're in timeout, I thought.
I'm not sure where he's going with this at this point. I think he may have burned too many options. I'm not sure what the Call by the Grave is achieving when he does this. Call by the Grave is banishing Ray. I don't know why he's done that, really. I don't know what that does. Maybe it does something.
It adds another spell to your graveyard. Yeah. Alright, so still Marcel Hunch's turn.
If I'm honest now, I think Marcel may have used up too many of his resources in order to effectively play around that Widow Anchor.
So maybe the Widow Anchor was just there to scare him into making these plays that might not allow him to do enough damage.
Yeah, I can't see him doing enough damage right now with the cards he has in his hand.
But was there a place where where he took a wrong turn, so to speak.
I think not chaining the Widow Anchor when Mind Crush was activated on it was a mistake, for sure.
Sven Rebmann is like sitting on the edge of his seat.
He's just like, yeah, I think he's probably just slowly coming around to the conclusion that his opponent can't do anything, and is just going to feel very sad if it turns out that his opponent can do anything.
Yeah. At what point is Marcel Hansch going to come to the conclusion that he might not be able to attack for game here or do enough damage?
He's probably already come to that conclusion.
So he's saying he's trolling us?
I don't think he's trolling, but I think you just keep checking. I think that's probably the thought in his head at the moment, is that it's not going to work.
Right.
But
and he's trying to...
I mean, he's going to just keep going and see.
Yeah, he doesn't want
his opponent might not use Widow Anchor.
There it is.
But there it is.
So what's he going to take?
Probably the Hayati. Just in case. I mean, it's got lower attack, but if you take the Hayati, then your opponent can't use any...
I just thought Labyrinth Wall would be a good card to take right now.
Yeah, your opponent won't be able to use any SkyStriker cards.
Exactly.
Afterwards.
All right.
But the Phoenixes are perfect. I think either of them. I don't see what happens. I mean, even if he didn't take either of them,
yeah,
Marcel wouldn't have enough damage on the table to attack the game.
And that is it. Yeah, now Marcel Hansch comes to the conclusion he cannot break the board. He cannot do enough damage, and that means that Sven Rebmann is going to win this match and advance to the top 8. Whew, what a match, what a thriller. The judges immediately like, hey, come on, sign this, guys. Let's talk about it a tiny little bit in our post-match analysis. This is what two very tired commentators look like after a very, very long match. We just concluded the top 16 with yet another thriller. We go back to back into the overtime. We can just see that everybody's like on the edge of their seats. Everybody's like, the adrenaline is basically...
Yeah, that was totally nuts. I didn't know who was going to win that game. And my opinion of who was going to win that game changed significantly when it turned out that Sven had a Ray in his deck.
Yeah, your fortune teller skills, they need some working.
They do. That
yesterday
slipped by me.
Yesterday
they were pretty on point. Yeah.
Very much on point and on par. Yeah. So guys, quickly recap. We have a whole lot of SkyStriker Pure in the top 16 now. We had a couple of different decks. Sven Rebmann with his Trickstar SkyStriker still in. There was one Burning Abyss player, not 100% sure if he advanced. And there's one player, Jonas Koschel, with SkyStriker Pure. Who is undefeated. Whoops, did I say that out loud? Who might be our next feature match. I cannot guarantee that because I think it's already got picked because apparently everybody else has finished their round, which means we can't even go to Luke and Matt. We're going to take a very quick break. Top 8 profiles are going to be prepared in the meantime. You can then find those very soon in the written coverage. We're going to try and grab a quick snack if time allows it. And then we're going to be back with the top 8 of YCS Utrecht. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be back as soon as possible.